Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
I've often had the uncanny valley explained away to me by my peers online and elsewhere as stemming from a natural response to make us avoid copulating with corpses and those who suffer from severe diseases. But I work as a mortician, and I know this is rather blatantly not true, and even showing them photos of lifeless bodies, even those heavily decomposed, desiccated, and otherwise, it doesn't elicit the uncanny valley response, yet they still staunchly push the hypothesis that it stems from the dead and the sick. I think I've uncovered something, but perhaps it's more a confirmation of what has been collective knowledge for years. I'm breaking the NDA on this one, but better to die getting sued for being a whistleblower than live with an ungodly secret. I was employed, by the US government no less, to decipher what could have possibly afflicted both a troop of 3 soldiers who returned home from the Middle East in body bags, along with a supposed ISIS fighter who they took with them. The lab I was stationed in was separate from my usual place of work, and it was soundproofed very firmly, to the degree you couldn't hear someone screaming their lungs out if you were outside the room, even with your ear pressed firmly against the door. The bodies of the soldiers were deformed, and they had been stripped of their fatigues. They looked like their flesh had been molded like putty, like something had gripped and pulled at their bodies and shaped them into these abnormal shapes. Dissection revealed numerous organs contained within the flesh, all serving seemingly no purpose, but continuing to pump and move even though the rest of the body was dead. The only discernible cause for death I could find was their heart giving out, presumably from the stress inflicted on their body by this process. I dread to imagine how painful it must have been to experience firsthand. The body of the ISIS fighter had set into me a carnal, primordial dread the second I had laid eyes upon it, or more specifically its face. Its skin was puffy, but at the same time its form was gaunt and pale. I could see the contours of the skull and the ribs and other bones just from glancing at its form, yet it clearly possessed fat and muscle, just also tightly conformed to the bone that the figure was skeletal, yet resembled nothing like a human, even one incredibly anorexic. I had great difficulty slicing into the flesh for the dissection. The skin looked so smooth and almost rubbery, but had a coarse, callous texture. It possessed double the organs of a human being. 2 hearts, 4 lungs, several stomachs, kidneys, and livers, and strangely of all an engorged appendix. Or what would be an appendix in a human body? I was certain that whatever I was dealing with was not human, and the existence of this appendix is what leads me to believe this even more so than everything else. It throbbed softly as I slowly removed it from the creature to closer examine, but it was stuck, bound to the flesh with a thin wire strand of flesh. I took my sharpest scalpel and still had to see with all the force I could to get it to snap. And the second I had, whatever was so terrifying about this creature to me ceased. The feeling of anxiety so intense I could vomit at any second despite how jaded I was had left me. And the creature's form seemed to change quite extensively. The fat, muscle, and other tissue that had been bound so closely to the skeleton seemed to relax itself, filling out a more realistic human form. At the same time, the additional organs quickly withered, rotting rapidly despite the conditions I had stored them in. They were stored safely in a freezer, yet they rotted like they had been left in the smoldering sun. The appendix of this creature was, upon closer inspection, a brain or some type of other gray matter enclosed in a fleshy sac. Slicing it open revealed soft, brain-like grooves, albeit insanely plentiful. Far more wrinkled than a human brain could ever possibly be. I was compelled to dissect the skull next, to study and possibly deviations in regards to the brain of this creature, and upon even greater difficulty getting the skull open, I was denied my curiosity. If this creature had a brain, it would have withered rapidly, being no bigger than a pill of melatonin. The only thing that had signified that it was a brain to me was the existence of small wrinkles and the texture of it. The government was pleased with my results, I must guess. I was paid a healthy amount and offered new housing on federal land. I denied, as I didn't want to move away from my family in my hometown. Yet they kept insisting. Constantly for the past 3 months I've received letter after letter in the mail, email after email, all insisting I move. At first they were friendly, but quickly they became violent and demanding. I suppose I might get a CIA reward for excellence in journalism soon, but I know no news service worth its salt would listen to my story. Believe me or not, X, I'll leave it up to you.
Cult theory really makes sense to me. I'm terrible at greentexts, but here you go. Move into luxury apartment after life of living in slums and shitty houses. Moving in said apartment with wealthy family GF that has helped me get life together. Mid-sized building in very large city. It used to be a union club building they have converted into apartments, but it stood abandoned for years and became a haven for homeless and drug activities. Has a pool on the 13th floor. Actually lists 13th floor on elevator and everything. Spooky photos from the 40s all around the building to show the before and after of the restoration, including a Shining-esque photo of everyone in the ballroom. All of this said, the restoration and apartment amenities are really nice and I feel very safe in the building. I genuinely trust in my intuition and I've never gotten a bad feeling about the place despite everything I've listed above. First day in new apartment, go to bed late because unpacking. Building is the quietest place I've ever lived despite being in a big city. Mattress on floor with GF upstairs. Hear things knocking over just as I'm falling asleep, then hear glass shatter. Gut reaction is that our cat is knocking things over, but when I sit up I see him sleeping in the bathroom. Go downstairs to investigate. Nothing is out of place. Go back to bed upstairs. Wake up to GF yelling at the cat. Go downstairs and the glass I drank water out of is shattered on the floor and a bunch of GF's paint tubes are all over the floor. Help her clean up and don't think much of it. Later in week. House is set up now, including chairs at the table, bed, etc. Wake up suddenly with the same feeling as before but don't feel anything. Feel compelled to go downstairs. Turn the corner at bottom of the staircase and an old woman is sitting at the table with her back turned to me. Freeze, not out of fear but like I'm seeing something I shouldn't. I can't really explain the feeling. Like hearing a private conversation you shouldn't. She's got messy hair and is wearing a nightgown. Hit an uneasy feeling as I start to approach like I'm going to go around to see her face and she's going to look like the Grudge or something. Calm my nerves and walk around her to the other side of the table. She's staring ahead but glances at me and looks me in the eyes with a polite smile, like one you give a waiter checking on your table. Again I feel like I'm interrupting. On autopilot and awkwardness I go to drink a glass of water. She's still staring at the other chairs. I get an overwhelming wave of tiredness. I set down the glass on the table as I try to brace myself and wrench my eyes open and get a look at her. She ignores me and I don't remember anything else but waking up the next morning. Wake up and rush downstairs. Glass is intact at the table and nothing is out of place. I don't know why but I felt like she was visiting. I don't know what either of my grandmothers. Both died long before I was born. Looked like so it's possible it was one of them. One of the oddest interactions and I haven't had an inkling of an uneasy feeling about this place since.
My grandparents lived in an old farmhouse they'd rented for like 30 years. I grew up hearing ghost stories all my life about it, and had my own experience there too. Apparently the farmer that owned it died in it, and didn't like people there. He obviously wasn't harmful or anything, just messed with people who were there as best as his ghostly self could. My dad told me a story about how when he was a kid there he was with a friend playing upstairs, waiting for their brother to get home off the bus. They heard him run up the stairs, but never saw him, looked all around. The third time this happened, as they were looking the bus pulled up and out popped his brother. My step-grandma moved in years after that. She is a very spiritual, Christian woman and apparently when she first moved in with my grandpa the ghost went a little nuts. I'm not sure exactly what happened to her, but she managed to tell it they were there to take care of the house, would keep it safe, etc. and it went pretty quiet. For a time while I was in college I lived there. All of the friends I've ever brought there could definitely tell there was something else there. The place had a vibe about it. One night I wanted to play some games on the big TV downstairs, so I grabbed my PS3 and started to quietly make my way down. Now both my grandparents were asleep in a room across the hall. I wanted to play and didn't want to be interrupted, so I didn't want to wake them. This was an old farmhouse, and I wasn't yet familiar with where all the floorboard squeaks were, so I went extremely slow. I would take one soft step and wait and listen. Sure enough, every time I heard both of my grandparents' distinct snores. I went through that elaborate description of my creeping around because, as I almost made it to the steps down after doing this for about 10 steps, I heard a voice I didn't recognize from right behind my head whisper "Goodnight Anon." Needless to say, I immediately tossed my precious PS3 on my bed and booked it out of the house to stay with my GF for the night. My grandma had a priest bless the house once a month after that and there weren't any other problems.
Be me. Little kid. At sleepover with friend. Chilling in his room in the middle of the night playing PS2. Closet door creaks open. Marker flies across the room and hits the wall. We both freak out. Couldn't sleep that night because every time I closed my eyes I could feel something grabbing my face. Ever since then been terrified of ghosts. Learn from TV that you can banish ghosts. Try to learn how by checking out books at my library, but none of the librarians take me seriously. One of them even suggests my mom take me to church, suggesting there was something wrong with me. Don't care. Go to bookstore and buy The Lesser Key of Solomon because I saw it on the library catalog under Paranormal. Read, nothing useful. Check out some books on shamanism, necromancy, attempt ritual to summon murmur. It doesn't work. Eventually figure out how to draw a magic circle to banish ghosts. Every time I hear a bump in the house, I whip out the magic circle and say my little chant, and boom, no more noise. Started going around to different areas like abandoned houses and banishing ghosts. Get a really nasty geist that follows me home. Still hasn't left. Can't banish it. Pray to murmur, no help. Seriously, murmur is the most worthless piece of shit. I don't even know why I try. Still here. 25 years old now. Stopped banishing ghosts. Pretty sure that the geist is still haunting me. I'm pretty sure this thing is the one misplacing my work gloves. Every time I get a side job and I go to get my work gloves, they are gone. Every time. I've gone through 4 pairs in the last year.
The most memorable one when I was maybe 5 was waking up in the middle of the night and seeing an older man in my room staring out the window. He was wearing a zigzag patterned sweater. My father went through some clothing left in the house from the landlord's father, who had died decades prior, and found the exact sweater. I had a little children's book that played music when you pressed different buttons, maybe 5 or 6 songs like Old MacDonald Had a Farm and such. One time in the middle of the night I woke up to the book playing a song I had never heard before. I had action figures of different brands and types that made noise when you pressed a button. In the middle of the day, most if not all of them started to make noise and wouldn't stop, repeating over and over. My parents were around for that and they had to put them in the guest bathroom we rarely used until their batteries died. I had seen green hands on 2 separate occasions. The first time it was at night. I was sitting on the couch that was in the middle of the living room, not pressed against a wall, and I saw a monstrous-looking hand with fairly long black nails and was overall grotesque. The other hand looked fairly normal and was near the doorknob in my bedroom in the middle of the night. My father claimed to have seen this hand on a different night. I eventually refused to sleep in that room since most of the occurrences happened there. I slept on the pull-out bed in the living room for years. One time in the middle of the night I heard a car drive into our driveway. I could hear it rolling on the gravel and even the car door open and close. I couldn't see the car and there were no lights and nobody came to the door. There were several other things that happened, but those stick out the most, and the rest are very fuzzy memories, as I lived there between 4 and 11 years of age.
Can you describe what the hands were doing?
The grotesque one seemed like it was reaching for me. Only the light of our fireplace was going, and when I turned behind myself to see it, it did not vanish. It reeled back into the darkness. I had vision of the hand for about 2 seconds, so more than a glance. The second hand looked completely different and was completely motionless. I think it was on my dresser that was right next to the doorknob, but it didn't move. If I remember correctly, this hand faded away, still motionless, over a period of maybe 5 or so seconds. The 2 hands seemed completely different, and the first one that seemed to reach for me felt much more malevolent.
Got a short happening to share. Be me, working at a small repair shop. Very rural area. The nearest civilization is a few hillbillies living in glorified crack houses a short distance from where I work. Guy comes in real late at night. He's clearly from a more urban area and seems really fidgety. Asks me to take a look at his car. According to him, he parked by the side of the road briefly to check his text messages and take a quick piss. When he got back into his car, he said it felt like his tires were slashed, and the engine took 5 or so times to start. I look at the tires first, and sure enough they were slashed, but they weren't knife marks or something mundane, like the slashes that you'd get from driving over sharp rocks or something. Looked like a bear tore into them. I start getting ready to change the guy's tires, pop the hood to see if there's anything wrong with the engine. The entire body of what I think is a newborn baby deer is crammed under the hood. Feel my heart sink to my asshole as I turn to the guy, pale as a sheet. He turns pale too, and walks on over to see what's going on with his engine. Nearly pukes at the sight. I tell him I'll do my best to get the poor thing out, and he should stay in here just in case. While I'm working on dislodging the dead newborn deer, I hear probably 2 or 3 people in trucks pull up outside the repair shop. Go from sweating bullets to sweating mortar shells. Try to shrug it off, thinking it might just be some of the hillbillies parking nearby because of the sheets. Door to the garage starts banging really loud. Sound like knives are being scraped against it. Guy ducks, immediately hiding underneath a table, smart move on his part. I try to slowly shimmy into the front of the store. Owner has a shotgun in a big case underneath the counter for robberies. Really bright lights are shining in through the windows at the front. Crawl on my belly to the counter. The shotgun is gone. Missing from its case. Shitting bricks at this point. Hear the garage door get wrenched open, the metal practically screaming. Screw this shit, I'm not dying for an out-of-towner. Crouch under the counter, gripping my pocket knife. Hear the guy scream bloody murder. Hear something large and metal, probably his car, get drug out of the garage. What the? Lights cease. Screaming cease. Tension ceases. Poke my head up over the counter, trying to look through one of the windows near the front to the parking lot. Empty, nothing to be seen. Get up and carefully walk back to the garage. Massive bloody smear leading from where the guy had hid to the door. Dead deer is gone. Call the police, they don't come until morning. Sheriff is shooken up from the get-go. My face when this shit is immediately hushed up, and the local police department hires a new sheriff a few days later.
Be me. 8-year-old lad whose family just had plush new carpet installed in the living room. Love the friction burn I get from pushing my neck up and down against the carpet bristles for some reason. Literally stay up late to play with carpet. Slip out of the bedroom and down the hall to mess around in the carpet after midnight. Lay down on my back, push myself with my feet up and down so it feels like I'm sliding around the floor. I feel something start pulling me towards the kitchen, but I don't freak out for some reason. Pitch black, can't turn the lights on for fear of waking parents. I'm suddenly awash in warm, comforting energy as I feel myself getting slowly dragged over the velvety carpeting. Whisper out loud to do it again. Repeat 10 times. Creep back to my room after because I can't be caught out of bed, even though I really wanted to stay and keep being dragged around. The next few nights proceed similarly, but after a while, whatever is pulling me by the ankles becomes prone to yanking me or will pick up the pace and start whipping me around over the carpet. Weirdly, I have to get up and lay back down or else I keep getting pulled away from the living room. Still have not seen whatever I'm playing with. Still fun, with that strange comforting numbness clouding my brain every time we play. Becomes routine. The last night I did this, I was dragged around in a circle twice before I got wrenched forward so hard that I flew off the ground. Realize I'm being pulled in the direction of the garage door. Look up and for the first time I get a glimpse at my playmate. I only see 2 gray eyes, look like they were made out of glow-in-the-dark material. Start getting tugged even more violently in the direction of the garage. Sit up and start running, the weird feeling of safety replaced with rage, not my own. I woke up with claw marks on my ankles, never played again. I only saw him one more time in my doorway. He was upset I didn't want to play.
I have one, though it's not really scary, just a curious couple of things I've experienced during these last years. Back in early 2020 had a dream where me and one of my cousins were on a crowded bus. Cousin and me were talking about something I can't remember until the bus stops. I get off but he stays on the bus and waves me goodbye. Wake up, don't think too much about the dream and go on with my day as normal. Couple hours later got a call from another one of my cousins. She told me the cousin I dreamt of the previous night took his life that morning. Long story short, his wife left him, went to live with another man and didn't let him see their 1-month-old son. He tried to see his son again the night before. Apparently things got ugly. She called the cops and promised she'd call her lawyers to make sure he'd never get close to them again. This was around the Rona lockdown, so he was probably affected by that too. I'm still confused about the dream to this day. We never knew the exact hour he did the deed, so I'm not sure if it was a premonitory dream or if he wanted to say goodbye to me for the last time. And this leads into my second story. Because of that incident, I became invested in dreams, dream interpretation, lucid dreaming, and all that jazz. Used to lucid dream all the time when I was young. Had full control of my dreams and imagined myself hanging out with my favorite cartoon characters, fighting monsters with my favorite heroes, fondling Raven's butt, etc. You know, normal kid stuff. Decide I wanted to try lucid dreaming again, though for more introspective reasons this time. Read that one of the most effective ways to start with lucid dreaming was to make a reality check. Basically a gesture or phrase or whatever that you have to repeat many times a day. Put my hand in front of my face, twist it for a bit, close and open my fingers twice, and finally say I'm awake. That's the check I ended up going with. It works on night 1. Except it didn't work quite right. I was aware in the dream, but I wasn't the one in control of it. Could see myself walking down a street I go through practically every day, though not in first person, but rather from a side. From my perspective, I could see besides myself a fence, and behind it a clearing that had a small soccer field with some steps surrounding them in the middle of it. Exactly what I'd see in real life if I were there. Then me, or the me from my dreams I should say, performed the reality check I described, but without the phrase at the end. When it was over, the skies turned orange and the grass and leaves turned sky blue. The fences disappeared and the field was replaced with a small hill. This hill was around that place IRL, but it certainly wasn't there, nor should it be visible from the place I was standing in. The me in my dreams does the reality check again, everything goes back to normal, and he smiles before saying it works. He then goes on his way like nothing happened. Couldn't tell you about the rest of the dream because I kept trying to rationalize what had happened until I woke up. Spooked enough by this experience to never consider trying to lucid dream again. Every now and then I have similar dreams to that one, though more grounded than that one. Except for the one with the flesh room that unleashed zombies on not me, or the one where a tornado forced not me to stay on a friend's house and he ended up screwing his friend's mom, but those stories aren't as interesting as they might seem. They're mostly about other me doing mundane things while I'm just there spectating. Funny thing is that as mundane as everything is, I still find it quite unsettling. Nothing weird happens per se, but the locations are familiar yet different. Like colors or the landscape being wrong, house or business being in a different spot that in real life or straight up doesn't exist. Which results in not me going to a dream knockoff version of them. One example I always remember is that of a street that, in real life, has a row of perfectly spaced trees on each side, a beautiful sight despite its mundanity. That in one of these dreams was turned into a dirt road with willows on each side so closely packed together they form a seemingly impenetrable barrier, with old wooden lamp posts that barely illuminate the road. It looked scary, but it was also cool as hell, that's why it always comes to mind. None of the other me's seemed aware of my presence, which is a huge relief to me despite thinking this is just my imagination running wild. Can't discuss this with my friends because apparently a Marvel movie recently had a plot where dreams are images of the multiverse or something, so every time I bring one of my dreams up they laugh and say it's just that. And that's it. Again, not scary, but I hope you had fun reading about these dreams of mine.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check out the Odyssey page in the description for a second archive of the channel's videos.